So I think it's super important to remember to keep pushing against the world even when you feel like you want to give up. I think all of us have these moments in our life where it's not easy, and it doesn't matter what stage that you're at. Maybe you're in an undergraduate degree program, maybe you're in high school, maybe, I don't know, maybe you are 80 years old at this moment and you are just afraid to keep going, to keep pushing forward, to take those steps. But I think in my mind, right, I think that it requires you to just put the blinders on and get going, no matter how scary things feel, or that you can't do something, or that the world just doesn't want to sort of give. I think the only thing that you can do in this world, the only thing that we could do, right? This is the option that we have, is that we let the world happen to us, or we press against the world. And we try to press against the world. And what do? How do we actually try to press against the world? You don't give up. You keep taking those steps, no matter what is going on in your life. And what's going to happen is that you will think about, oh, I'm going to get through this thing. You get through this thing. Maybe it's your undergraduate or your college program, and you think you get through it. And then you think, oh, this is my life. It's going to be all set. Everything's going to be wonderful. And then the next thing is going to happen. You're like, I'm going to push through this thing. And you push through this thing. And then you think your life is going to be wonderful. And then you get there and you realize it's the next thing. And everything is like that. We think that the world, and we train, unfortunately, we do a poor job of training people to do this as university professors. We are terrible at this. We tell people that there's this little, you just have to do this little thing and everything is going to be done. But it's never ending. It is about just getting up and being okay with yourself and taking that step every single day. I see people doing things where they are trying to check out, basically, right? And that's okay. I think checking out and having a controlled checkout is good. That's very, very helpful. But sometimes that sort of checking out from the world doesn't do you that well, right? It's harming you in some sort of way. And I want people to sort of think about, how can I do this in a controlled way so that I could do what I'm doing in a better way, and doing things that allow me to push against the world rather than having the world happen to me. And that is a really big distinction, right? Because there's so much that happens. Everybody's going to go through this. Everybody does, right? You're going to have this sort of wonderful plan of how you're going to do this thing and this thing and this thing, and all of a sudden the world happens, and then all of that stuff, right? What is the saying, right? It's and everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? And that's what's going to happen, and you are going to have to take a step back and say, what do I do? What do I do? And the only option that you have is you can give up, or you can just take those steps forward. You could say, no, I'm not going to let that part of my life take control of what I'm doing, and I'm going to work through that. And sometimes the most difficult thing that you can do is to acknowledge that that really tough thing has happened, and actually lean into it and talk about the tough things, be open about the tough things that happen to you. I remember like moments that were really dark in my life, right, that were really, really tough. Getting tenure was a really difficult time for me in my life, and going through that, I had to really push through it and discover, and it should have been a wonderful time, but it wasn't, right? It was a really stressful, awkward time for me. And so I had to push through that. I remember when I had, two dads die early on in my life. My father-in-law and my dad, as I was newly married, and that was a moment where I just had to push forward into that. And the only thing that you can do in those moments is take that step the next day. Some people check out. Some people just say, I can't do this, and that's my life. That's the end of it. But life is long, and it doesn't matter how old that you are. I think if I can get people to think about, Okay, I'm 60 years old at this moment, and I think that I can actually get up and relive an entire life, which you can't. That's the amazing thing, right? Like you look at somebody that is quote unquote living their life for the first time, right? They're going to be 25 years old and having a wonderful job. What if you were 60 years old and you decided to go back to school and you actually did the 5 years or whatever it took? Maybe it took you 10 years, but you're 7 years old and you're doing something that you love. Maybe that you're doing something like architecture, or maybe you become an artist and you do all this training to become an artist. Why don't we do these things? Why do we view ourselves as this is the only thing that we have? That I was here in this moment doing this thing for a long time that makes me who I am. I think we can redefine ourselves and think of ourselves in many different ways, but we have to keep going and we have to say, I can do this. I know the world's going to make fun of me, and they will, but that's part of the world pushing back on you. Where the world is actually pushing back and making fun of you, that's where you stand up and you say, I'm going to get back up, I'm going to do this again. And you know what? You're going to get silly comments and all those kind of things, but you get back up and you do that thing again, and you repeatedly do it until it actually becomes a thing. That's the only recipe I know. I've gone to school for many, many years. I've taken all sorts of different stuff. And the only thing that I figured out that we could do that allows us to get from here to there, wherever that there is, where we feel a little bit better about ourselves, is getting up and getting back up again and doing that repeatedly. The only time where things don't work out for you is when you actually give up on yourself and you stop it yourself. So don't give up. There's a lot to live for. There's a lot that you can possibly do, but you have to get up and get going.